Hi, my name is Diane Bowen, and I'm really excited to share with you why I love using cutting templates when I paper piece. I am a mom with 5 young children, and when I quilt, I don't have time for dilly-daddling. Over the years, I have fine-tuned my paper piecing process to ensure that I can actually finish the projects I start. Cutting templates are a key part of that process. In the Zodiac BOM Pattern Walkthrough Series, Part 3, I explained the basics of the cutting templates. So please feel free to watch that before beginning this video if you feel like you want a quick introduction before we begin. While this video is made specifically as part of the Zodiac Block of the Month video series, everything I share here is applicable to any and all foundation paper piecing patterns. Looking at each cutting template, you can see that they are labeled with the corresponding pattern name, the block, which is an uppercase letter, the section, a number, followed by a lowercase letter, which is the fabric reference. Use the labeled coloring page as a reference to help you match up the cutting templates with the fabrics you have assigned for the different sections. Some of the cutting templates are for more than one section in one block. For example, Block D 1Y 2X. This means this template is for Block D Section 1Y and Block D Section 2X. Because you need 4 copies of the pattern templates to complete one block, you will need to cut out 4 of this template from your Y fabric and 4 from your X fabric. Some templates are for more than one section in more than one block. For example, in the Aries pattern, Block C and E 4X. This means this template is for Block C Section 4X and Block E Section 4X. Since these are both X fabrics, you will need to cut out 8 of this template instead of 4. 4 for Block C and 4 for Block E. Wait, just a minute. How exactly do you know how many pieces to cut out? 4, 8? Where are those numbers coming from? If you are wondering the same thing, let me tell you. Looking at the labeled coloring page, I have outlined one of each of the different block sections, pattern templates A through D. For each of the Zodiac BOM patterns, one block is made up of 4 quadrants, or 4 of these outlines, which means you need 4 copies of each pattern template to make a finished block. So let's do the math. Each pattern template needs 1 piece of fabric per section. If you need 4 pattern templates, you'll need to cut out 4 pieces of fabric. So let's look at the places where you can find out how many pattern templates you need and how many pieces of fabric you need to cut from each cutting template. One place is on the page with the pattern templates. If there's only one of each pattern template per page, then you can reference the pattern template page to see how many you'll need for one block. As you can see here, it says print 4 copies, which would mean that you would need to cut out 4 pieces of fabric per section or cutting template. Sometimes, to save paper, I've placed 2 of specific pattern templates on a page, which means you only need to print out 2 copies to get all 4 copies of the pattern templates. So pay attention to that and know that the print number is not always reliable as to how many pieces of the fabric you will need to cut out. The second place you can look is at the labeled coloring page. You'll need to count how many times a block section, Block A, Block B, etc., is repeated throughout the coloring page, or simply count how many times a specific section is in the block. To save time doing it this way, you only need to count once. If there are 4 of one section, then there will be 4 of every section. You don't need to count out each one. The third place you can look is in the instructions. In step 2, it tells you how many copies of the pattern templates you will need. For the Aquarius pattern, it says you need 4, so you will need to cut out 4 pieces of fabric per cutting template. Though remember, depending on how you colored your coloring block, all 4 of those pieces might not come from the same fabric. So pay attention to your plan and use the labeled coloring page as a guide. I want to point out that not all patterns are the same. In my dusk pattern, which is a 9-pointed star, there are 9 sections, or 9 copies of the sections that you need to complete a finished block. And for any given cutting template, you will need to cut out 9 pieces of fabric for it. But in my Hidden Gems pattern, none of the sections are repeated. Rather, there is one set of cutting templates which you use once as is and then once in the reflection. So make sure you pay attention to the pattern you are using to help you plan ahead. Knowing how many you need of each piece and sorting out your cutting templates per fabric can really help reduce the confusion and speed up the process. I hope that was helpful. The shaded area is the seam allowance, which is 3/8 of an inch. This provides enough wiggle room to piece with without wasting too much fabric. Print one copy of the cutting templates at 100% or no scale. I like to cut them on heavier paper such as cardstock since I can use them over and over again. The heavier paper helps them last longer. Cut out your cutting templates from the paper exactly around the outer border. I store my cutting templates in a sealable sandwich bag and label them with a Sharpie with the pattern name and size. That way I don't have to cut out new templates every time I use a pattern. Another great tip to save time. You can cut out the center of the cutting template to create a window, which is great for fussy cutting. After you've cut out the center, you can move your template around on your fabric to find the perfect section for your block. The window you've created with your cutting template gives you a perfect preview of what your design will look like in your finished block. Using this technique is really a lot of fun and can add a lot of interest to your finished quilt. Here are the most basic and fundamental instructions for cutting out your fabric using your cutting templates. Lay your fabric right side up on top of your cutting mat. Lay your template print side up on top of your fabric. Cut around the template, keeping the exact shape of the cutting template. This is very important. You must cut the exact shape of the cutting template, or piecing will be very difficult and frustrating as you try to figure out how to position your fabric with the pattern template. I have found it easier to piece when I cut close to the template, staying true to the size of the template, and have found that aligning my fabric when paper piecing is very difficult if I cut too generously around the templates. Feel free to try both methods and see what works best for you. But remember, no matter what size you cut your fabric, you must stay true to the shape of the cutting template or you lose the benefit of them. If you like, you can use a ruler to help you cut around your template. Simply line up the edge of the ruler with the template and use the ruler as a guide. That is the most basic use of the cutting templates, and using that method alone for each piece of fabric can be very time consuming. Once you have that understanding down, let me share with you some of my tricks for speeding up the cutting process. If you are using fabric that doesn't have a right or wrong side, like solids, then you can cut more layers than one at a time. Fold your fabric over the width of the cutting template. Place the template close to the fold and cut through both layers at once. You have now cut out two pieces at once. Let me quickly walk you through what I'm doing here. When I use white fabric, which I use a lot, I just cut it straight from the bolt, which means that it's already 2 layers thick and I don't have to fold it over. So I just find a piece on my fabric edge where my template best fits to minimize fabric waste. And then once I make those cuts, then I move it over and I cut again until I've cut all the pieces that I need from that fabric. You'll also notice here that after I've cut out around my cutting template that some of the corners aren't cut all the way through. Part of the benefit of using cutting templates is the reduced amount of fabric waste. If, as I cut around the cutting template, I cut big slits into the surrounding fabric, that creates a greater amount of unusable fabric. Sometimes I can work around those slits and it's not a big deal, but I prefer to keep my cutting on the safe side, even if it means I need to do a little extra cutting to get the pieces out. Now that I'm done cutting out those template pieces, look at how much fabric waste I have. It's really not a lot, and definitely a lot less than when I don't use cutting templates. To speed up the cutting process even more, fold over your fabric accordion style so you have 4 layers, keeping the folds just larger than the cutting template to minimize fabric waste. Cut out around the cutting template to cut out 4 sections at once. That is much faster than cutting them all out individually. I would not recommend cutting through more than 4 layers at once, as it becomes harder to cut them out accurately. I said to fold over the fabric accordion style to get 4 layers, but since I was cutting out my white fabric from the bolt, I didn't do that. I am such a visual learner. If I can see it done, I can do it. So in case you are the same, I want to demonstrate what folding accordion style looks like. I start by folding the fabric over once and comparing my fold to the template piece. I want it small enough that I'm not wasting any more fabric than necessary, but wide enough that I'll easily be able to cut around the template. Once I have the right width of fabric folded over, I lift it up and fold under another layer of folded fabric and straighten it all out, making sure the bottom layer is the same width as the top. I did that kind of quickly in the video, but here you can clearly see my extra layers of folds, which means I have 4 layers of fabric. Next, cut around your cutting template. Wait, oh no, I messed up. 2 of my pieces don't match my cutting template. What a waste. Oh wait, I have another template that is the exact reflection of the first. Phew, we're good. I'll talk about this more in just a minute. If your cutting template is symmetrical, a square, a rectangle, some triangles, some diamonds, or any other shape that is exactly the same shape in the reflection, these shapes you can cut using the same method as with solid fabrics. If you are unsure if your template is symmetrical, simply fold it in half. If both sides match up, then it is. Fold your fabric over the width of the template, line up the template close to the fold to minimize fabric waste, and cut around the template. Lay out your cut fabric sections, and you can see that when you flip them both over so they are both right sides up, they are both the same shape. Repeat this step until you've cut out all the fabric sections that you need for your block. Caution: if you use this method with a template that is not symmetrical, then you will waste your fabric. See what happens when I cut out this shape? I have one piece that is correct, which I can use, and one piece that is the reflection of my template, but I cannot use it. To find out if your cutting template is symmetrical, you can fold it in half down the middle. If both sides match up, then it will work using this method. If not, then it won't. If there are 2 templates that are the reflection of each other and you are using the same fabric for each, then you can cut out your fabric for both templates at the same time. Fold over the fabric the width of the template, cut out close to the fold. You now have one piece that matches the template you used to cut around and one that is the reflection of the cutting template you used, which normally you would not be able to use. This method of using the cutting templates works because you are still following the rule of placing the cutting template print side up on the right side of the fabric, as you can see here when I place the reflected cutting template on the other side of my fold. This concept is a little trickier, so I always take time to think about it before I cut to avoid wasting fabric. Once you have this down, it can be a great time saver. Another way to reduce fabric waste is align the cutting templates so they are nested next to the previous space where you just cut. If you do this carefully, you won't waste much more fabric than you would cutting out the pieces one at a time. And you'll save a lot of time. When you are comfortable using these speed methods, you can fold over your fabric so you have 4 layers and cut out all 4 pieces at once. I wouldn't suggest cutting through more than 4 layers at a time. If you're fussy cutting or using directional prints that you want to keep in the same direction in your block, then you'll want to cut out one piece at a time using the most basic method. It takes a little longer, but the results are phenomenal. To fussy cut your pieces, cut out the center of your cutting template. Lay the fabric right side up on the cutting mat. Place the cutting template also right side up on the fabric. Move the cutting template around until you have the desired design inside the cutting template window. Carefully cut around your cutting template and repeat for the remaining pieces. If you are using directional prints and would like the direction to be consistent in your finished block, you can easily accomplish this with the cutting templates. First, figure out how you want your directional print to go through your finished quilt block. Use the labeled coloring page to help you figure out how to position your cutting template to get the right alignment of your fabric print. I like to first align it over the labeled coloring page and then carefully lay it on my fabric without rotating it. Here's a quick tip. Because the straight edge of my cutting template is parallel to the lines on my pattern, I can easily make sure that my pattern is lined up just right for perfect vertical lines in my finished block by aligning the edge of the template with the line on the fabric. Cut out around the first section. I then like to place the fabric piece over my labeled coloring page to help me keep track of which pieces I've already cut out. Usually, to help me save fabric, I cut the opposite piece next. Since my template is in the same position or alignment, I can nest the cutting template right next to where I just cut out the previous section. Depending on your pattern, it might not always work out that way, so always reference the pattern before cutting. Again, referencing the cutting template, I'm moving on to the third section. For this section, I need to rotate the cutting template by 90 degrees. With my pattern rotated, I no longer have the benefit of that straight edge to line up with the pattern on my fabric. To compensate for that, I line up my ruler with the straight edge and draw a few perpendicular lines on my cutting template. I can now use those lines as a reference with the pattern to ensure my pattern is perfectly vertical. Cut out around the cutting template and repeat the process with the remaining sections. This will require more attention while paper piecing and assembling your block sections, but the results are worth the extra effort. If you would like more guidance on this technique, please let me know. I'm happy to help. I now have all 4 sections cut out and all of my lines are going in the same direction. Now I only need to worry about assembling my block sections correctly to keep it that way. Isn't using directional prints fun and easy? If you are using a pattern that does not include cutting templates, or you would like to join multiple adjacent sections in a pattern, you can easily make your own cutting templates. I'm going to walk you through the process I use to make custom templates for joining sections 3B and 4C in Block D and sections 6C and 7B in Block C. For my Aquarius Mini, I strayed from the original design just a little to join these sections as I wanted them to be one solid section. I always prefer to have the least amount of seams as possible as I think it creates a cleaner finished block. If I'm using the same fabric for neighboring sections, I will always join them into one section when I can. To get started, print out an extra copy of the pattern template for which you would like to make a cutting template. Mark the section or sections that you want included in your cutting template. Using a ruler, draw a line that is 3/8 of an inch out from the section border. Repeat on all sides for the section, connecting the lines to create a border around the entire section. Repeat for any additional cutting templates you are making. Cut out around the outer border of your new cutting template. This next part is very important. The cutting template needs to be the reflection of the pattern template. Otherwise, you won't be able to use the fabric you cut out. You can do one of two things. One, when cutting out your fabric, remember to place your custom cutting template print side down on top of your fabric that is right side up, instead of placing the cutting template print side up, like the rest of the cutting templates. I don't like to have to remember exceptions, so I stay away from this option, but you can use it if it works for you. I like option 2, which is flip the custom cutting template over and trace around the inner border of your new cutting template, making this the new print side up of the cutting template. Use a light source if needed to help you see where to draw your lines. Shade in the area between the center section of the outer border to make it clear where the seam allowance is, which is especially useful for fussy cutting. Label your custom cutting template with the sections and block. You have just made a cutting template. You can use this in all of the methods I've shared with you. And a quick way to check to make sure that the cutting templates are correct: if you lay the template over the coloring page, they should line up exactly. If they are the reflection, then you need to use the opposite side of the cutting template. Remember, the print side of the pattern template is the reverse of the coloring pages and cutting templates. The cutting templates and the coloring pages are the same. And that is basically it for the cutting templates. They are a lot more simple to use than they may appear. I hope you will give them a try. I think you'll like them. I know I don't ever paper piece without them. All of these concepts that I've shared with you transfer to all of the cutting templates in all of my patterns. Once you get used to them, these concepts will tremendously speed up the cutting process and you will breeze through all of my patterns with ease. Once you've cut out all the fabric for your block, you are ready to start paper piecing. Be sure to watch my next video tutorial on paper piecing to see the benefits of using cutting templates in the actual paper piecing process. Also be sure to check out my other videos for more tutorials and tips. If you have any questions or something is unclear, please ask away. If there is something specific you'd like to see in more detail, please let me know. I'm happy to help. I'd also love your feedback. I'd love to know what you think about the cutting templates. Have you used cutting templates before? Do you like them? What method works best for you? Thank you for watching my video. I hope you found it helpful. I can't wait to see what you make. Happy quilting and happy creating.